The massive crystalline dome of the Galactic Confederation Council sparkled under artificial starlight as dozens of alien species gathered for their weekly session. Admiral Vextar, his purple skin gleaming under the chamber lights, tapped his clawed fingers impatiently against the metal surface of his floating chair. Around him, representatives from across the galaxy chatted in their various languages, creating a symphony of clicks, growls, and musical tones. "What's next on the agenda?" asked Council Member Zethra, her insect-like head turning toward the central display screen. Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence as she adjusted her translator device. A junior aide, barely old enough to serve in the council chambers, approached nervously. "Admiral, we have received a transmission from a previously unknown species. They call themselves humans." The chamber fell silent for a moment before erupting in curious murmurs. New species were rare discoveries, and most were either too primitive to matter or too advanced to need council approval. "Display their message," Vextar commanded, settling back into his chair with mild interest. The holographic projector hummed to life, showing a bipedal creature with pale skin and short brown hair. The being wore a simple blue uniform with strange symbols on the chest. Behind him, a modest spacecraft floated in the darkness of space. "Greetings," the human said in clear, measured tones. "I am Captain James Mitchell of the United Earth Government. On behalf of humanity, we request an audience with the Galactic Confederation Council to discuss terms of peaceful coexistence and mutual trade agreements between our species and your alliance." The message continued for several minutes, outlining humanity's basic capabilities, their recent expansion into space, and their desire to join the galactic community. As it played, the council members began to whisper among themselves. "Look at that ship design," chuckled Commander Thexnell, his tentacles waving with amusement. "Fusion drives. Can you believe it? We haven't used such primitive technology for over 1,000 years." Admiral Corthes, massive even by his species standards, leaned forward in his chair. "How long have these humans been traveling between stars?" The aide consulted his data tablet. "According to their transmission, approximately 200 years, sir. They have established colonies in roughly 30 star systems." The chamber erupted in laughter. 200 years was nothing in galactic terms. Most species took at least 500 years just to develop proper faster-than-light travel, and another 1,000 to become a significant power. 30 systems? Zethra's mandibles clicked in amusement. The Vrex Empire alone controls over 10,000 star systems. These humans are barely more than a curiosity. Vextar studied the tactical information displayed alongside the human message. Their fleet consisted of perhaps 300 vessels, none larger than a standard council patrol ship. Their weapons appeared to be basic plasma cannons and primitive missiles. Even their armor looked thin and inadequate. "They seem polite enough," observed Councillor Nemtar, her soft voice barely audible over the continuing chatter. "Perhaps we should at least respond to their request. Why waste our time?" Corthes rumbled, his deep voice carrying easily across the chamber. "They have nothing we need and nothing we want. Their entire civilization could be conquered by a single battle group in less than a week." The aide cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, there is one interesting detail. They specifically requested a meeting at neutral territory rather than requesting permission to enter our space. They also made no mention of seeking protection or asking to become a client species." This comment drew more laughter from the assembled representatives. Most new species either begged for protection from stronger neighbors or immediately offered tribute in exchange for being left alone. The humans had done neither. "How amusing," Vextar said, a slight smile crossing his features. "They actually think they can negotiate as equals. Very well, let's humor these newcomers. Schedule a meeting at Kepler's Gate Station in 7 days. We'll see what these primitive mammals have to say for themselves." As the council moved on to other business, several members continued discussing the human transmission. Their technology was laughably outdated, their numbers pitifully small, and their territorial holdings insignificant. Yet something about their approach struck a few observers as unusual. "Did you notice their ship formations?" asked junior analyst Velka, speaking quietly to her superior. "Very precise. Almost military in nature." Her supervisor waved a dismissive appendage. "Probably just copying formations they've seen in our public broadcasts. These young species always try to imitate their betters." Meanwhile, in the Council's Intelligence Division, analysts pored over every detail of the human transmission. Their ships appeared functional but unimpressive. Their uniforms were simple and practical. Their weapons were basic but adequate for their apparent level of technology. No obvious weaknesses, reported Chief Analyst Mordak. But no particular strengths either. Standard procedure for a minor species contact should suffice. The meeting was scheduled, routine diplomatic protocols were prepared, and the Council prepared to either dismiss humanity entirely or offer them the standard client-species arrangement that most newcomers eventually accepted. What none of them noticed was the faint harmonic frequency buried in the background of the human transmission. It was so subtle that their communication equipment registered it as simple engine noise or static interference. The pattern was too regular to be random but too quiet to seem important. As the Council session ended and the representatives returned to their various ships and stations, the human transmission was filed away as a minor curiosity. In 7 days, they would meet these newcomers, explain the realities of galactic politics, and add another small species to their ever-growing list of protectorates and clients. None of them suspected that humanity had been listening to their communications for months, learning their languages, studying their technology, and preparing for this exact moment. The massive docking bay of Kepler's Gate Station buzzed with activity as 3 human vessels approached the neutral meeting point. Ambassador Rebecca Thompson stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching through the viewport as alien craft of every imaginable design filled the space around them. Some ships looked like living creatures with organic curves and flowing lines. Others appeared to be geometric crystals that somehow moved through space. A few resembled floating cities with towers and spires reaching in all directions. "Quite a welcome committee," muttered Captain David Hayes, Rebecca's military escort. His uniform was crisp and formal, though he kept his hand casually near his sidearm. Rebecca smoothed her dark blue diplomatic robes and checked her translator one final time. "Remember, David, we're here to talk. Let them make the first move." The human ships were tiny compared to the alien vessels surrounding them. Where the Confederation ships gleamed with exotic metals and energy fields, the human craft looked almost industrial with their gray hulls and simple designs. Several alien observers could be seen pointing and laughing at the modest Earth fleet through their own viewports. Inside the station's grand conference hall, the Galactic Council had assembled in their finest ceremonial garments. Admiral Vextar wore a flowing cape made from the silk of his homeworld's giant spiders. Council member Zethra's carapace had been polished to mirror brightness. Admiral Korth SS stood nearly 3 meters tall in his formal battle armor, each plate inscribed with the names of conquered worlds. When Rebecca entered the hall with her small delegation, the difference was striking. The humans wore simple uniforms with no decorations except small rank insignia. They carried no weapons and brought no ceremonial guards. Rebecca herself was unremarkable by galactic standards: average height, brown hair pulled back in a practical style, and a calm expression that revealed nothing. "Welcome, humans," Vextar announced with exaggerated politeness. "How kind of you to visit our humble station." The sarcasm was not lost on Rebecca, but she simply nodded respectfully. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us, Admiral. We appreciate your time." More snickers rippled through the alien delegation. Zethra leaned toward her neighbor and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Look how small they are. I've seen cargo containers larger than their biggest ship." Admiral Korth SS stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the entire human delegation. "So, little humans, you wish to join our galactic community. Tell us, what exactly do you bring to offer us?" Rebecca opened a small data pad and began reading in a steady voice. "Earth can provide rare minerals from our asteroid mining operations, unique agricultural products from our diverse biomes, and skilled labor for various engineering projects. We also offer our services as neutral mediators in disputes between member species." The laughter that followed was loud and long. Councillor Nemtar wiped tears from her eyes. "Minerals? Agriculture? Child, we have entire star systems dedicated to mining. We have agricultural worlds that could feed your entire species for 1,000 years. And mediators?" Korth SS boomed. "What could a species that has existed in space for barely 2 centuries teach us about diplomacy? We have been resolving conflicts since before your world had written language." Rebecca waited patiently for the laughter to die down. "We understand your position. Perhaps we could discuss other arrangements." Vextar waved a dismissive hand. "Indeed, let us discuss reality. You have 3 options, humans. First, you can accept our protection as a client species. We will defend your worlds in exchange for resource tributes and military support when needed. Second, continued Zethra, you can attempt to remain independent and face the dangers of the galaxy alone. Pirates, hostile species, natural disasters, all problems far beyond your current capabilities to handle." Admiral Korth SS smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Or third, you can refuse our generous offers and discover why so few species choose that path. The threat hung in the air like a physical presence. Several of Rebecca's staff shifted nervously, but she remained perfectly calm. These are certainly interesting proposals. We would need time to consider such important decisions. Of course you would, Vextar said with mock understanding. Take all the time you need. Shall we say 72 hours? That should be sufficient for even your primitive decision-making processes. As the formal session continued, the aliens made increasingly condescending comments about human technology, culture, and intelligence. They compared human ships to museum pieces and human colonies to barely functional outposts. Several council members openly wagered on how quickly humanity would accept protectorate status. During a brief recess, Rebecca requested permission for her ships to coordinate with human civilian vessels in nearby space. We want to ensure our merchant traffic doesn't interfere with your operations during this transition period. How thoughtful, Corthes replied. Yes, coordinate all you like. We wouldn't want any innocent cargo ships to wander into restricted areas. What the aliens failed to notice was the subtle change in background noise that accompanied the human communications. A faint, rhythmic humming had begun emanating from somewhere within the human transmission frequencies. It was barely audible and easily dismissed as equipment interference or engine vibrations. As the meeting reconvened, Rebecca made one final request. We ask for safe passage for all human vessels currently in this sector while we consider your offers. Granted, Vextar said magnanimously. We are not unreasonable. Your ships may travel freely while you make your decision. The humming grew slightly stronger, though still too quiet for most to notice. Those few aliens with sensitive hearing found it mildly annoying but assumed it was simply a quirk of human technology. As the session ended, Rebecca stood and bowed formally to the assembled council. Thank you for your patience and hospitality. We will have an answer for you within the specified time frame. Walking back to her ship, Rebecca allowed herself a small smile. The first phase was complete. The second day aboard Kepler's gate station began quietly enough. Admiral Vextar sipped his morning nutrition fluid while reviewing routine reports from across the Confederation. Trade disputes, minor territorial adjustments, the usual business of governing a galactic empire. He barely glanced at the section mentioning human ship movements in the outer sectors. Sir, his aide approached nervously, we're receiving some unusual reports from our monitoring stations. Vextar set down his cup with mild irritation. What kind of reports? Well, sir, it seems the humans have been quite busy coordinating their civilian traffic. Our sensors are picking up a lot of communication chatter from their merchant vessels. And this concerns me how? Vextar asked, already losing interest. The aide hesitated. It's just that there seem to be more human ships out there than we initially calculated. The communications are coming from multiple star systems. Before Vextar could respond, a soft chiming sound filled the air. It was faint but persistent, like distant bells or the hum of machinery. He looked around his quarters, trying to locate the source. What is that noise? The aide checked his instruments. Unknown, sir. It seems to be coming through the station's communication array. Possibly interference from the human transmissions. Meanwhile, in the main conference hall, Rebecca Thompson was meeting with a smaller group of council members for what they called preliminary discussions. The session was supposed to help humanity understand their options before making a final decision. Council member Zethra clicked her mandibles impatiently. Surely you can see that our offer is generous, human. Most species would be grateful for such protection. We do appreciate your consideration, Rebecca replied calmly. However, we want to ensure all our people understand the implications. We're currently consulting with our colonies and fleet commanders throughout human space. Admiral Corthes leaned back in his massive chair. How many colonies do you claim to have again? 30 systems? Approximately, Rebecca said with a slight smile. Though our definition of colony might differ from yours. We tend to be quite spread out. That soft humming sound was growing stronger. Several alien delegates found themselves unconsciously tilting their heads, trying to identify where it was coming from. It seemed to resonate through the very walls of the station. Your communication equipment is quite loud, observed Councillor Nemtar, her sensitive hearing picking up harmonics that others missed. Rebecca nodded apologetically. I'm sorry about that. Our long-range transmitters operate on all the technology. We're coordinating with quite a few vessels across a wide area, ensuring everyone knows about our current situation. How many vessels? Zethra asked, more out of curiosity than concern. Oh, just our standard merchant marine, Rebecca said casually. Cargo haulers, transport ships, mining vessels. You know how it is with a growing civilization. Always ships moving somewhere. Captain David Hayes, who had been quietly observing from the back of the room, stepped forward. Admiral Korth SS, if I may ask, how does the Confederation typically handle the transition when a new species accepts protectorate status? The massive alien commander smiled, pleased to discuss military matters. Quite simple, really. We station a small patrol fleet in key systems to maintain order. Most species find the presence of our ships quite reassuring. I see, David nodded thoughtfully. And how do you coordinate such a large operation across multiple star systems simultaneously? Experience, Captain, Korth SS boomed proudly. We have been managing galactic affairs for millennia. Our communication networks and fleet coordination are the most advanced in known space. The humming sound pulsed slightly, almost like a heartbeat. Some of the more perceptive council members were beginning to frown, realizing that the noise had a pattern to it. It wasn't random interference. Junior analyst Valkyrie was working late in the intelligence center when she made an unsettling discovery. The human communications weren't just coming from their 3 ships at the station. Her sensors were detecting transmission sources scattered across dozens of star systems, all using the same harmonic frequency. She called her supervisor immediately. Sir, I think we may have underestimated the scope of human activities. What do you mean? Came the tired reply. The background humming everyone's been complaining about? It's not coming from communication equipment. I think it's engine harmonics. Lots of engines. There was a pause. How many engines? Valkyrie stared at her readings, double-checking her calculations. Sir, if these readings are accurate, there are human ships positioned throughout Confederation space. Not just merchants. These signatures are consistent with military-grade propulsion systems. By the 3rd day, the humming had become impossible to ignore. It resonated through every corridor of Kepler's gate, a constant reminder that something was happening beyond their understanding. Some crew members reported headaches from the persistent noise. Others found it strangely calming, like the sound of a massive engine running smoothly. Rebecca was having tea with several council members when Admiral Vextar finally confronted her directly about the sound. Ambassador Thompson, this noise is becoming quite disruptive. Surely you can adjust your transmission frequencies? Rebecca sipped her tea thoughtfully. I'm afraid that's just how our systems operate, Admiral. We're maintaining contact with ships across a very wide area. The harmonic resonance is an unfortunate side effect of our older technology. Exactly how wide an area? Zethra demanded. Oh, throughout human space, Rebecca replied vaguely. We want to make sure everyone stays informed about these important negotiations. Counselor Nemtar's 4 eyes narrowed. This sound, it has rhythm. Purpose. It's not random interference. Rebecca's expression remained perfectly innocent. I wouldn't know about the technical details. I'm just a diplomat. As the final hours before humanity's deadline approached, the humming continued to grow stronger. Some aliens began to realize with growing unease that the sound seemed to be coming from everywhere at once, as if the very fabric of space around them was vibrating with some vast, hidden presence. The quiet response was becoming anything but quiet. The final hour before humanity's deadline arrived with an atmosphere of tense anticipation aboard Kepler's gate station. Admiral Vextar paced his command center, the persistent humming now so loud that conversation required raised voices. The sound had evolved from a gentle background noise into something that seemed to shake the very foundations of the massive station. Status report, Vextar barked at his communications officer. Sir, we're detecting massive gravitational disturbances across 17 different star systems, the officer replied, his voice tight with concern. The readings are consistent with multiple vessels dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Vextar felt his stomach drop. How many vessels? Before the officer could answer, the main view screen activated without authorization. The image of a human woman appeared, but this wasn't Ambassador Rebecca Thompson. This woman wore a crisp military uniform with gold insignia that even the aliens recognized as indicators of high rank. Galactic Confederation Council, the woman said in a voice that carried absolute authority. I am Admiral Victoria Cross of the Human Defense Fleet. I trust our diplomatic team has kept you entertained during our deployment phase. The command center fell silent except for that ever-present humming, which was now clearly identifiable as the harmonic resonance of thousands of ship engines operating in perfect synchronization. Admiral Corthes burst into the command center, his massive frame filling the doorway. What is the meaning of this? Where did this transmission originate? Victoria smiled coldly. We're broadcasting from multiple positions, Admiral. You see, while you were busy explaining galactic politics to Ambassador Thompson, my fleet has been taking positions throughout your territories. The main tactical display activated, showing a three-dimensional map of Confederation space. Red dots began appearing by the hundreds, then thousands, scattered across every major star system, trade route, and strategic position within the Empire's borders. Impossible, whispered Council Member Zethra, her mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. Our sensors would have detected such a massive fleet movement. Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, Victoria replied. 3 modest diplomatic vessels and some civilian merchant traffic. What you didn't realize is that we've been mapping your territories and studying your defenses for months before we ever sent that first diplomatic message. On Kepler's gate, Rebecca Thompson entered the main conference hall where the panicked council members had hastily assembled. Her calm demeanor hadn't changed, but now it seemed less like diplomatic politeness and more like the confidence of someone holding all the winning cards. You lied to us, Vextar accused, his purple skin flushed with anger. We told you exactly what you expected to hear, Rebecca corrected. We said we had 30 star systems. We never said those were the only systems with human presence. We said we had 300 ships. We never said those were our only ships. The tactical display continued updating as more human vessels revealed their positions. The aliens watched in growing horror as they realized that every major Confederation stronghold was now surrounded by human forces. Every trade hub had human ships in perfect position to control traffic. Every military installation found itself under the watchful presence of vessels that had appeared from nowhere. This is an act of war, Corthes roared, his hand moving toward his ceremonial weapon. Captain David Hayes stepped forward, and for the first time, the aliens noticed that his simple uniform bore insignia they hadn't recognized before. Combat decorations. Campaign ribbons. The marks of a soldier who had seen real warfare. Admiral Corthes, David said quietly, I suggest you reconsider that statement. You're currently surrounded by approximately 12,000 human vessels, all of which have been in position and ready for combat operations since before this meeting began. The number hit the Council like a physical blow. 12,000 ships. The entire Confederation Navy numbered barely 8,000 vessels spread across the galaxy. How? Zethra whispered. How did you build such a fleet without anyone knowing? Rebecca finally allowed her diplomatic mask to slip slightly, revealing a hint of steel underneath. You assumed we were primitive because our technology looked simple. You assumed we were weak because we asked for peace. You assumed we were few because we sent a small diplomatic mission. Victoria's image on the main screen leaned forward. Your intelligence services are quite thorough when it comes to obvious threats. Unfortunately, you're not very good at recognizing patient ones. We've been listening to your communications, learning your languages, and studying your military capabilities since we first detected your broadcasts decades ago. The harmonic humming that had been driving the station's inhabitants to distraction suddenly shifted, becoming deeper and more resonant. Throughout Confederation space, human fleet commanders were synchronizing their engines in a display of coordination that would have been impossible without years of preparation. Every ship you're hearing, Victoria continued, every engine note in that harmonic pattern, represents a human vessel that has been watching and waiting. We know the location of every Confederation military base, every supply depot, every communications relay. Admiral Vextar sank into his chair, the full scope of humanity's deception finally becoming clear. You've been planning this since first contact. We've been planning this since before first contact, Rebecca confirmed. We knew that any sufficiently advanced alien civilization would view us as either irrelevant or threatening. We chose to let you see us as irrelevant until we were ready to demonstrate otherwise. The tactical display now showed human ships in formation around alien worlds throughout the galaxy. Not attacking, not threatening, simply present in overwhelming numbers. The message was unmistakable: humanity had the capability to strike anywhere, at any time, but had chosen to reveal their strength through positioning rather than violence. The question now, Victoria said from the main screen, is what happens next. We offered you partnership as equals. You chose to treat us as primitives seeking your protection. We're prepared to discuss new terms, but the balance of power has shifted significantly. The sound of thunder had revealed itself to be the quiet approach of storm clouds that had been gathering unnoticed for far longer than anyone had imagined. The grand conference hall of Kepler's Gate had never been so quiet. The constant humming of human engines filled the silence like a heartbeat, reminding everyone present of the thousands of ships now positioned throughout Confederation space. Admiral Vextar stared at the tactical display, watching red dots that represented human vessels surrounding every major alien stronghold in the galaxy. "This changes nothing," Admiral Corthes declared, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "You may have ships, but you're still outnumbered by our ground forces, our planetary defenses, our allies throughout the galaxy." Rebecca Thompson walked slowly around the conference table, her diplomatic robes flowing behind her. "Admiral, you're still thinking in terms of the old equation. You believe this is about conquest, about who has the bigger fleet or stronger weapons." She stopped directly in front of the massive alien commander. "What you don't understand is that we've already won the only war that matters. The war of information." Captain David Hayes activated a portable holographic projector. The display showed detailed schematics of alien military installations, complete technical specifications of Confederation warships, and communication codes that were supposed to be classified at the highest levels. "We know the exact location of every ammunition depot on your homeworlds," David said calmly. "We know the patrol schedules of your border fleets. We know which of your allies are actually loyal and which are simply afraid to rebel." Council member Zethra's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. "Impossible. Our security systems are impenetrable." "Your security systems were designed to keep out other alien species," Rebecca replied. "They weren't designed to detect humans who have been patiently observing and learning for decades. While you were building bigger weapons, we were building better intelligence networks." Admiral Victoria Cross materialized on the main viewscreen again, her expression serious but not threatening. "Confederation Council, let me be perfectly clear about humanity's position. We are not here to conquer your worlds or enslave your populations. We're here to establish a new balance of power." Vextar found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "What do you want?" "The same thing we've always wanted," Rebecca answered. "Partnership. Cooperation. Trade agreements between equals. The difference is that now you understand we truly are equals." The humming seemed to pulse in agreement, thousands of ship engines synchronizing across the galaxy in a demonstration of coordination that spoke to decades of preparation and planning. Councillor Nemtar, who had remained silent throughout the crisis, finally spoke. "You could have simply attacked us. Taken what you wanted by force. Why reveal yourselves this way?" Rebecca's expression softened slightly. "Because that's not who we are. Humans prefer to build rather than destroy, to create rather than conquer. But we also refuse to be treated as lesser beings by those who mistake patience for weakness." Admiral Corthes slammed his fist on the table, causing several smaller council members to jump. "You speak of partnership, but you've surrounded our worlds with warships. How is this different from conquest?" David stepped forward, his military bearing now unmistakable. "Admiral, when was the last time the Confederation offered partnership to a species you considered inferior? How many civilizations have you absorbed not through war, but through the simple threat of overwhelming force?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Everyone in the room knew the answer. The Confederation had grown by convincing smaller species that resistance was futile, that cooperation was their only path to survival. "Now you know how it feels," Victoria said from the screen. "The difference is that we're genuinely offering partnership, not demanding submission disguised as protection." Rebecca activated her own communication device. "Computer, display current human fleet positions." The tactical map zoomed out to show the entire galaxy. The red dots representing human ships began to move, slowly pulling back from some positions while maintaining coverage of others. It was a gesture of good faith, a demonstration that humanity's strength could be tempered with restraint. "We're withdrawing from non-military positions around your civilian populations," Rebecca announced. "Our ships will remain in international space and around strategic locations, but we won't threaten innocent lives." Vextar watched the display with growing amazement. "You're giving up tactical advantages voluntarily?" "We're proving that we can be trusted with power," Rebecca replied. "Something the Confederation has never bothered to do." The harmonic humming began to change, becoming less overwhelming and more rhythmic. It was still present, still a reminder of human capabilities, but no longer the crushing weight it had been moments before. "You have 3 choices," Victoria announced from the viewscreen. "First, You can accept humanity as an equal partner in galactic affairs. We'll establish trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and work together to maintain peace and prosperity. Second, David continued, you can attempt to maintain the old system where the Confederation dictates terms to smaller species. In that case, you'll discover that humanity is no longer a smaller species. Rebecca walked back to her position at the head of the table. Or third, you can choose conflict. I should mention that every human ship in your space is currently broadcasting detailed information about Confederation military capabilities to every oppressed species in the galaxy. If you choose war, you won't be fighting just us. The implications of this revelation rippled through the council chamber. Dozens of client species had been waiting for any sign that the Confederation could be challenged. With human military support and shared intelligence, rebellion would spread like wildfire across the galaxy. So, Rebecca said with a slight smile, shall we discuss the new terms of galactic politics? Or do you need more time to consider your options? Admiral Vextar looked around at his fellow council members, seeing fear, respect, and grudging admiration in their faces. The old equation had indeed changed forever. Let's talk, he said quietly. The sound of human engines continued to hum softly in the background, no longer threatening but simply present, a constant reminder that the galaxy now had new guardians who preferred peace but were prepared for anything else.